heard Atom Smasher from Cirith Ungol, King of the Dead. This is the Requiem Metal Podcast. I'm Mark.
And I'm Jason. Welcome to the brave new world, Mark. The future's here, or haven't you heard? The sons of man have fell from grace till the Smasher comes to save his race.
It's true. It's true.
And once again, we're kind of revisiting a theme that those of you who are loyal listeners heard in the last few weeks, or probably by the time you hear this, maybe about a month or so ago, when we did the sort of first part of this kind of duo of records that they're somehow kind of strangely aligned in the universe of weirdness that is the early 80s kind of heavy metal scene. This is a record out of Ventura, California, I believe the band's from. 1984. It's their second record. They had a debut called Of Frost and Fire in 1981. It took them quite a while to sort of put this together.
All self-financed.
Yeah, self-financed and things like that. And so it's, just kind of an interesting record. And it's one the band feels pretty strongly about. In particular, you get a lot of stuff from the drummer, Robert Garvin. He's kind of spoken out on it. There's he wrote a review of it on Metallium, which is pretty cool. He wrote a review on Amazon.com, where he's sort of voicing his opinion about what he feels about the record. And so I don't know all the dynamics of the band's history or if there was a falling out. I really, I'm sort of the wrong person. We didn't really research that. We just sort of looked at this particular record. Yeah. We do know that there was kind of one kind of big band member change before the record, which is Greg Lindstrom had been on A Frost and Fire and had actually written some of the songs that will end up appearing on King of the Dead. And so that's
there didn't seem to be any there wasn't a big shake up or anything. He just decided to leave and said, sure, you can use the songs.
Yeah, use the songs, so no bad blood there. But like Manila Road, kind of a tough band to categorize, and this is a record that I reached out to King Folly from the deceased about, and unfortunately he didn't really get a chance to record anything like what Jeff Wagner did for us with Manila Road, and what Jeff Wagner will also do for this record. But King did say, I'm a big supporter of the record, and he said, feel free to quote and use any of the stuff that I said in the liner notes for King of the Dead, so we will. throughout this episode, kind of go back to the words of King, because he's a guy like we've talked about Fenrez or other sort of people. He's very well scholared in the history of metal, and he's
lived it since it started.
Yeah, and this means a lot to him. Obviously. Tim Baker, the vocalist, who we'll talk about him much like we talked about Mark Shelton with Manila Road, famously said in an interview about a year before this record came out, he said, it's going to be 1,000,000 times more radical. People aren't going to know it's the same band. And I think there's something kind of to be said about that. He goes on, he says, the lyrics are much more intense and the music is more heavy. And if you listen to Frost and Fire, it's hard to sort of predict this, It's kind of like hearing Show No Mercy and then hearing Rain and Blood. Both are great, but there's a fierceness to this record and an aggression that's just kind of wild, almost it's like listening to the sound of a train that's about to come off the tracks at all times. You know, it's just dangerously close to the edge production wise.
Well, just even what we said about the Manila Road episode is that they're on the verge of their playing ability too, right on the edge of I can't quite make that note right, but it just seems really frenetic and inspired.
Yeah, well, and Tim Baker, the guy who we just sort of sent that quote from, did I get it right? Tim Baker? Yeah. He is easily the most kind of divisive element of it, much like Shelton's vocals with Manila Road, but I would say kind of more so with Cirith Ungol. I could see where a lot of people kind of can't take the vocals serious because he's so over the top with some of the stuff that he's kind of doing here. I love it. I find it very endearing. It's very honest. It's raw. It's
about somebody finding their voice, no matter how weird it might be, in contemporary and understanding of what's good in singing or whatever. But and as far as metal goes, it's definitely there's so many bands now that you can't. If you hear somebody screaming, you don't know who the hell it is. Back then, it seemed like a little bit more of a variety. I don't think it was as much of a. I don't think we're trying as hard to to stand out. They were just doing what they really wanted to do. It seems like a lot of these. I mean, internet is a factor you couldn't even imagine at that point.
I think a factor that you have to maybe consider is that, you know, by 1983, 84, commercial success in heavy metal was not synonymous. It wasn't something like, you know, Sabbath was black, you know, they were popular and they certainly made a lot of money, but they didn't really refer to themselves as heavy metal.
They're a rock band.
They're a rock band that had like heavy metal overtones that we can kind of look back historically and sort of say, oh, they were setting this in motion. Priest was like, you know, really the first band to kind of fly the flag for heavy metal and like identify themselves as heavy metal. But they were,
they were on their, they were like on their, on this, like, you know, late 70s. They were still around, but they weren't quite as vital as they would become, I think, again, because the whole new wave of British heavy metal movement, you know, Tigers of Pantang and Def Leppard and Iron Maiden, all that, re-energized, I think, Priest, too.
Kind of grabbed Priest and took them on the wave with them kind of into the 80s.
It kind of like put the wind in their sails, revalidated them as, you know, well, at least Halford is the god of metal. But.
With, you know, British Steel and, you know, Screaming for Vengeance and stuff like that in 80 and 82, you know. And so, you know, I mean, even though this record's 84, you could make the argument by then, you know, Quiet Riot has broke and Twisted Sister and some of these bands have started to commercialize a little bit. But, you know, like you said, like they're just kind of doing what they felt like doing. And I think what's so interesting about this band, too, and I made the remark, you know, we were kind of chatting before we hit record here. I said, you know, what's so strange about this record is it upends a lot of your expectations, like almost at every corner. Just when you think you kind of like got these guys nailed, like what are they gonna do next kind of thing, all of a sudden this blistering guitar solo that's like soulful and all this, it just kind of bubbles out of nowhere, you know. Because there's a primitive nature to some of the things they're doing with the you know, some of
the production for sure.
And yet at the same time, there's also like a sophistication compositionally. You know, they're drawing from, and we're going to talk a lot more about it, from Rush, from like other progressive sort of rock acts. And yet, I get the feeling like, and maybe correct me if I'm wrong, you sometimes get the sense with this band, what makes them really unique is that each of them seems to be like doing their own individual thing, and somehow it like fuses together and works. Like they almost sound like they're all in different bands doing different things. And like the bass player is playing this super like complex kind of like,
they're all struggling for their voice to be heard in the group.
They're like fighting against one another throughout, and there's like a tension in the music. So like when Tim Baker like comes out of like the guitar solo in Atom Smasher, you know, and he's, you know, like, or even like the opening, that welcome, like he's just like, holy shit, like he's like grabbing your throat and being like, you know, here I come, you know. And then even just like little flourishes, like that little like drum kind of pop thing that you compare to Transformers the movie soundtrack or something, you know. It's just so weird, like a weird choice that they're making, you know. Tell us the other band members. Well,
we've got Tim Baker on vocals, Jerry Fogel, may he rest in peace, on guitar. He passed away in '98. Greg Lindstrom wasn't on the record, but the Finger Scorn he wrote. Then we've got Michael, God, what was his last name? Vijaya? Okay, on bass, and then Robert Garvin on drums. That's kind of been the core.
And Vijaya in particular, somebody like, you know, when they talk about great metal sort of bass players, you know, obviously they talk about Geddy Lee, they talk about Steve Harris, Les Claypool, even like the guy from Armored Saint and Overkill are both like pretty fantastic.
Dee Varney. He's great, you know, he's more hardcore punk. Really.
He is for sure. But like, you know, this guy is a guy that just never gets like the attention, and the stuff he's trying to pull off here is fairly complex and amazing. You know?
He's playing like a lead guitar player. Or like a rhythm, like back and forth. I think especially, I know there's definitely probably 2 guitar tracks recorded, but you know, live setting, I don't know if they brought in another guy, but he could totally stand just how Rush has never needed another,
anything but a 3-piece.
Another guitar player or anything, because the bass fills in. You know, it's not just like playing along like Poison, open D top string over and over.
And so I think, you know, he doesn't get the attention he deserves, but I mean, everyone's kind of on the top of their game. You know, the solo work like that you just heard there in Atom Smasher, from Fogel is just like incredible.
A lot of it, yeah. I was mentioned earlier that it reminds me of Dave Murray-ish, Iron Maiden solos mixed with like KK Downing.
Yeah, a lot of Sad Wings type stuff. Yeah, it's got that tone of like Dreamer Deceiver. And actually, I would say this, and correct me if I'm wrong. I feel like when I hear a song like Atom Smasher, especially because it opens the whole record, it's got this great sort of rumbling kind of like quality, like at the beginning that builds and stuff. It sounds like the bastard child, the victim of changes.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? It's got like some of those kind of dynamics, but it's not like, obviously Tim Baker can't sing like Halford, but it sounds like a guy that's stretching his vocals as far as the
very limit
go.
Yeah,
in an attempt to like capture the sort of energy of like the high notes of what like a guy like Halford might have been doing. At some points. So
because this is right at the time where everybody was kind of trying to do the high vocal thing.
Sure.
I think just to fit in the musical dynamic or sonic dynamic of to be able to, if everybody was singing gutturally, like it kind of just blends in with everything else, but getting up above there. But then like Tom Araya was doing his own thing.
Sure.
Nobody really ever sounded like him at all.
No.
Hetfield sounded.
Even hits like Araya even hits some of those like King Diamond kind of notes. Like, on Tormentor and things like that on the early Show No Mercy stuff.
And then Hetfield and Possessed was, I guess they were coming around at that point. Jeff Becerra is kind of doing his. Everybody seemed like they had a little bit more identity, like trying to, I guess more so than the Manila Road thing we're talking about as far as standing out. Vocalists at this time seem to have more of an identity.
I agree. Yeah.
Like everybody kind of sounded like their own thing at that point.
And Tim Baker's got this sort of like warbly, kind of like almost like a King Diamond, like shrill, shrieking quality to him at times. Even though he's not doing what King Diamond does, it has that same kind of personality.
It's like singing with laryngitis kind of thing, which is interesting, And
it can be a hard selling point for some people.
Yeah.
I get, especially probably 1984 when.
But if you see pictures of this guy, he looks like he's just like. Or even I was watching some live video, and he's just singing his fucking heart out.
Really? It's just going
good.
For it.
Yeah, great stage presence and everything, and
which is awesome. And about Atom Smasher, King Folly says in the liner notes to King of the Dead, he says Atom Smasher gets the ball rolling with sheer power, only ever letting up for guitarist Jerry Fogel to introduce yet another dark musical passage into the Smashers world, which is cool. And King kind of made a really cool comment about this record that I thought kind of stood out, and pretty sweet. He says, I find more darkness and dread in the Cirith Ungol's King of the Dead than any Obituary or Cannibal Corpse record ever offered me. And, when you look into the lyrics on this record, and the lyrics were inspired by people like Michael Moorcock and Robert E. Howard and Harlan Ellison, they're very dark. I mean, there's a lot of, like apocalyptic kind of fantasy sort of elements.
Sure.
It's pretty interesting from a lyrical standpoint, and from an art standpoint. Talk about the Michael Whelan covers and stuff.
That was I guess it was just by pure happenstance they wrote him a letter and said, hey, we're in this rock band or whatever, we'd like to use your covers. Would that be, or we want to, it'd be cool if we could use, because they were huge Moorcock fans, and Whelan did all the covers for these books. And I think even some of Moorcock's themes and stuff make it into a lot of their lyrical content and stuff. Sure. I've never read any Moorcock. I'm not
me neither.
familiar with what he's done.
Did he write Elric? Do I want to say?
I really have no idea.
Just pulling on my butt there,
but he let them use the artwork for free, and all four of their albums have, or no, the first three records have the Whelan covers. But those are. I remember seeing One Foot in Hell at the record store when I was a kid. Cover, I was just like, wow, this looks amazing, but I have no idea what the fuck this is.
And you like Cirith Ungol is of course a Tolkien reference.
Path of the Spider or something.
Yeah, it's where Shelob or whatever
it's giant, Elvish,
the giant spider that attacks them in Lord of the Rings.
Pass of the Spider.
So so these guys
say it in the extended version of the Peter Jackson movies.
What's that? Oh, do they?
But they pronounce it the correct.
Cirith Ungol, I think, is how you pronounce it. And Wagner and
sounds a little more uppity when he did the heavy metal. It's just Cirith Ungol.
And Jeff Wagner, who we talked about in the Manila Road episode, who, again, if you maybe didn't listen to the Manila Road episode, he's a metal author, metal journalist, wrote a book recently about Peter Steele from Typo Negative and stuff. He's kind of like King Folly from Deceased, kind of a metal expert, and he said when he was researching it to record the little thing you're going to hear in a little bit, he realized that he had been mispronouncing it his whole life, and so have we, and we're just going to kind of go with the mispronunciation. Yeah. So I think for those of you who are Tolkien nerds out there, or fantasy people, I do believe it is something like Cirith Ungol or something like that. But
it's just like how Samhain is supposed to be pronounced Samhain.
Samhain, yeah.
And I was like, I'm not going to
Celtic,
call it that. That's stupid.
And it happens, and I get it. I get, like as a teacher, I get like the idea of like why it would be important, but this is fun. We're just having fun, this is
but it's a different thing. Like with the Samhain it's a pagan tradition. Samhain is a punk band.
Yeah.
That can be called something different.
Hey man, it's the Boston Celtics. It should be the Boston Celtics. It
should be.
I live in a town called Armada, but it should be Armada because Armada is like a badass like warship kind of like legion.
Yeah, it's like a 3-ship or whatever the.
The Spanish Armada, famously.
I was gonna throw out the names of the ships.
Fleet? Oh, well, you're probably thinking
the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria.
Yeah, I don't know if that's. I think it's more of a war fleet.
Okay.
Yeah, because the famous story where the Armada comes into play is, was it 1588? Queen Elizabeth is fighting Spain for naval superiority, and they basically, Spain had ruled the naval sort of, the Mediterranean and the Atlantic and stuff, since they were kind of the first major European power to kind of get out there and do it. And then Queen Elizabeth sent some, I think it was Sir Francis Drake and some other people out and kicked the shit out of the Spanish. And
was that George Costanza's favorite explorer? Or was that Magellan?
Well, they do talk about Drake cakes all the time. Okay. So it could be that. Who knows with Costanza? So I listened to a great Survivor, or not Survivor, but Seinfeld podcast from a guy who played on Survivor, and they're always making a lot of like repetitious jokes throughout all of it. So. I don't know where I was getting. Oh, with pronunciation. And so I'm embarrassed that I teach in this town that could have a more badass name than what it does, but they there's like a conspiracy theory.
The Michigan accent.
Right. Yeah, the nasally. Speaking of Mark Shelton's nasally vocals, we in the Midwest have a kind of a nasally quality to ourselves. But so I mean, it's a nifty record, and it's one that kind of. We've talked about this record before, back when we did our top 10 years in...
Was it Crucial Years of Metal?
Crucial Years of Metal, yep. Yeah. This made an appearance in the 1984
we played episode. Master of the Pit, I think, didn't we?
I think we played Atom Smasher.
Did we?
I think, because it was shorter. I think because Master of the Pit was so long. I think we wanted to play Master of the Pit because who wouldn't want to play Master of the Pit? It's the song on this record for those of you that never heard it.
Yeah, if there was one.
If there was a single, I would say probably that Atom Smasher, Finger of Scorn seemed to be kind of like even King of the Dead. I mean, this is a masterpiece. We're focusing on this record because it kind of is the Cirith Ungol masterpiece. And we should kind of make mention that one of the impetuses, at least from my point of view, to sort of bring this up to Mark, and this is kind of comes full circle back to Mark in a weird way, is Decibel, which is a magazine we sort of talk a lot about on this podcast. If you're not familiar with Decibel and you want to be up to date on kind of metal that's kind of in the era that Mark and I kind of talk a lot about, It's a great magazine, and recently they did the special collector's edition of the top 100 old school metal albums of all time, of which you had a big part in.
Well, I did the cover. This is the fourth one of these they've done, I believe, but it's the third cover I've done.
There was the black metal one, which I don't think you did the cover for that one, right?
Well, there was an original. This is they started doing just like
mostly a bath on the cover. I felt like was there?
Yeah, but that wasn't the top 100 issue. It was just a black metal special issue.
Yeah, you're right.
And they did a thrash metal special issue, but these are like the top 100 albums. So there's been death metal, black metal, doom. This is the fourth one, and old school heavy metal, which is I think anything pre 1987 or something. That was the conceit for that cover. But yeah, that was pretty stoked to be able to throw in. Get some Scorpions and Sabbath stuff and Deep Purple. Yeah, the entire thing's on the front.
And stuff. So I mean, it was kind of fun for you to be able to kind of like draw these sort of classic records.
Oh yeah.
And just like any kind of list, what happens is it creates and stimulates debate, but it also, like for me, got me sort of thinking about, oh man, these are records I've heard about. But man, I need to like check them out because I like put off like Riot and Sortilege and some of these like weird like obscure records.
You got to be in a mood too.
Maybe it's like time to sort of go out and grab this stuff. And Cirith Ungol's one like
it made it in the Doom issue as well.
Oh, did it?
For Actually, for this record, I think.
Oh, is it for King of the Dead?
For King of the Dead, and I think One Foot in Hell.
One Foot in Hell made it for this.
Made it for this one.
And so, those seem to be the two records people dig, and we wouldn't be opposed to, One Foot in Hell down the road. And even Wagner, in the recording you're going to hear when we end this first talk set, before we go into the next set of songs, talks about how it's a close second. It's a good record and stuff. So if you dig what you hear here, absolutely check out some of that other stuff. In terms of like where the sound of it comes from, it obviously has some doomy Sabbath aspects, but there's a lot of early Rush, especially those first like 4 or 5 Rush records, Progressive Steel, 2112, Fly By Night. I hear a lot
self-titled as well.
Yeah, even the self-titled. There's a lot of Working Man kind of riffs that you hear
Working Man's a Sabbath.
Yeah, it's total Sabbath
riff.
Yeah, but they just sort of like complicate it a little bit more.
Sure.
In the mid sequence of the song, and that's a song we actually have played before. We opened up our Labor Day.
That's right.
with Working Man. So. It's kind of fun, like Mark and I kind of restarting the podcast, because it's gotten me to kind of go back and kind of scroll through and listen to some of our old episodes, which now in hindsight are 3, 4, 5 years old, and it's kind of fun because like
almost 7 years.
I forgot about this stuff. Yeah, our first episode was April of 2008, I believe so.
I don't remember now. Yeah, but I was looking up. It was almost seven years. It'll be 7 years in. This in April 2016. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Even though it took a year and a half break or whatever.
Took a little break there, but yeah. So anyways, it's been kind of fun, obviously coming back and getting the feedback from you guys. But we did play that Rush song on there, and actually Jeff Wagner, who we talk a lot about, has entertained the idea of maybe doing an early Rush episode.
And that's a band that I've always been on the fence about. I've always liked certain songs, but now actually at least all the Mercury area stuff, and then. I forget who did the later half of their stuff, but they reissued all the records and like pristine, really nice.
Up to Moving Pictures. I haven't really checked out.
I have every record right now.
Do you? I mean,
up until Clockwork Angel. The last record.
Okay.
Like every single record now.
I even like some of the stuff in the early '90s, like when Jeff Grant Corcoon, who kind of does some stuff on occasion with us. He and I were in high school. Z93 played the hell out of like Counterparts. Like
that's like the B-side stuff. Not all the hits. They're great.
But even some of those were like heavy for their time.
Yeah.
They were decent and stuff. So.
I even like some of the really like synthy, like hemisphere-ish, stuff too.
That stuff I need to check out. I
hated it when I was younger because you just have to be mad about something.
I hated new wave though, too when I was younger, and now I have like a greater sense of appreciation for some of that stuff.
But I really appreciate the melodies and the songwriting and stuff that they're doing there, even though it's not as hard hitting as I would have liked.
Sure. Well. Let's get a little bit kind of deeper into this stuff. This next trio is going to be a hell of a trio. First off, we'll start with Jeff Wagner's kind of words, and then we'll start with Black Machine, which again has all those things we just kind of talked about, the KK Downing Sad Wings kind of guitar type stuff. It really has like a Rush kind of feel in terms of the guitar tone sometimes. All the instruments,
sparse it, like letting everything breathe a little bit too.
Yeah, it's got this weird, I compared it to like it has this like shimmering kind of sound, like everything's in the red and overdrive.
Oh yeah, especially when those leads come in.
Oh man, they just kind of come out of nowhere, and
it's almost like the beginning of what the hell's the Emperor song? It was on the self-titled. The EP, the
Night of the Tyrants.
No, the Black Wizard. I'm the Black Wizard.
Oh yeah,
It almost has that kind of like everything's in the red and about ready to explode. Yeah,
I compared it to. It sounds like those old shitty Hot Licks guitars. It kind of has like a kind of tone at times. But so Black Machine's pretty standard. It's not like one of the songs I'd say that like jumps off like Atom Smasher. But then from there we get into Master of the Pit, and I want to kind of set that song up a little bit because it's definitely the highlight of the record, or one of the several highlights. The introduction kind of has a very Iron Maiden-esque Remember Tomorrow kind of is that a bass kind of intro to it? Yeah. And then it really goes into this Judas Priest, Iron Maiden, Wishbone Ash kind of like soloing stuff throughout the record.
Uli John Roth, Scorpions era stuff.
Yeah, it's even got like some Sabbath swing to it and some of the drum beats that Robert Garvin does. And then like there's this just soloing kind of back and forth jamming sort of part all throughout the middle.
To himself.
Yeah, and that's where like the Uli John Roth kind of stuff happens as well. But I also compared some of it. It's got this like soulful quality to it that you hear in some of like the kind of 70s Detroit-inspired punk stuff like Sonic's Rendezvous Band or even Radio Birdman and stuff, like where it's just got heart to it, but yet it's like got a lot kind of going on. And
just a rawness to it.
It's really raw. And here's what King Folly says. He says, track 3 may be the band's finest musical moment ever in the form of Master of the Pit, where Cirith Ungol becomes almost in a trance while delivering some of the absolute most intense jamming ever recorded. The guitar playing in the song alone should bring shivers to anyone who lives for and follows the charm of dark heavy metal. 100% masterpiece.
Yeah,
so
I totally agree with that.
Couldn't have said it any better myself. So we're going to get into a trio of songs. We'll talk about King of the Dead, the title track, when we come back a little here, but we want to pass things off to Jeff Wagner, and he has some thoughts that we concur with first, and then we'll hear Black Machine, Master of the Pit, and then the title track, King of the Dead.
Cirith Ungol had that thing that's pretty rare, which is several members who are so completely unique and recognizable in their delivery or tone. I mean, even beyond the vocalist. And it seems like they were all born to play in that very band. Jerry Fogel had that frazzled guitar tone, and Flint's Rickenbacker bass was always flanged to hell. And Tim Baker's phantasmagoric screech had this otherworldly quality to it. Total love or hate style. And it all came together to best effect on King of the Dead, which is easily the high point of their catalog, and I think most Ungol fans would agree. Though I think the following album, One Foot in Hell, is nearly as strong and certainly worth a look and lots of listens.
Your
was King of the Dead, Master of the Pit, and Black Machine. I was just commenting to Mark that the cool thing he does with his vocals is it's sort of like the Master of the Pit. Like he just kind of like rises up with. He does it in like almost all the songs. It's pretty cool. But there's something really just charming about that song. It's just kind of comes out of nowhere, and you don't expect like all these like one guitar kind of solo after another, and each of them kind of has like a different style to it, and
just that even in the opening riff, it's just like it doesn't really sound like it sounds like a hard rock, riff. It doesn't really sound like metal outside of it. It's a little crunchy.
And but one song that does definitely have a very much of a metal tone right from the very get-go is that title track that we just heard. Kind of opens with very like Rush-esque kind of bass playing meets like definitely Black Sabbath.
Oh, absolutely.
And there's sort of this like back and forthness between those two styles for quite a bit, and then right around like the 2:25 mark, it just like gets doom as all hell, and that's where it starts to build towards, you pointed out, like a lot of Cathedral.
I can see why. I always heard Gary Jennings from Cathedral mention that Cirith Ungol is a big influence, and that definitely the quintessential Cathedral single string detuned riff.
Sure.
Just total Gary Jennings.
And Cathedral is like such a strange band because they always seem to be like the pieces of Cathedral always seem to be like doing the opposite of like what was popular at the time that it was popular. So like Gary Jennings was like one of the few guys that was doing like British thrash in the late 80s when like British thrash never took off and became a thing like it was here in the States.
Yeah, there was really nothing.
Then like he decided to join. Maybe? Yeah, Sabbath was about the only, with Andy Sneap and stuff was like about the only other thing. And so he did, what was it called? Acid Rain, I think was the thrash band he did. And so then, like, they decided to do doom right when, like, speed metal and death metal is, like, coming popular. So like, they're always, like, moving in the opposite direction of what was, like, normal.
Even with Acid Rain, Adam Lehan came from there as well. Mm-hmm. They consecutively stole both guitar players.
Yeah, which is funny. And, and, like, Cirith Ungol is kind of the same way. Like, where do they fit? Like Manila Road, they're kind of paving their own way. And I don't know if it was because... they weren't from San Francisco or L.A., even though like they had a relationship with Brian Slagle, Metal Blade.
Yeah, Slagle even said that there was really no scene. They were the scene there, so they had nobody to bounce off of. They were just writing insularly inside their own basements and garages.
Yeah, their own like weird bubble.
Yeah, like they didn't fit in with the Sunset Strip. They didn't fit in with the more, like the Omen kind of sounding,
Sure.
new wave British heavy metal stuff or any of that. They were kind of onto themselves.
Mm-hmm. And King on that last song said that the title cut follows, and again we're treated to a huge dose of classic Cirith Ungol. Dread, what else? The bottom end bass just roars from Michael Flint Vuhea. Vuhea? I don't know. I'm probably butchering that name. I apologize. And the almost subliminal psychedelic tones in the guitar gives way for drummer Robert Garvin's infamous gong, and the stage is set for almost 7 minutes of all that makes Cirith Ungol great. The song is a perfect showcase of where the band's dark heart lies. And so, again, he sums it up really well. And I think that, the band, besides, people like Fenrez or Fowley or Cathedral, have you heard of other people that like, kind of, like, make reference to Cirith Ungol? I mean, I could see, like, maybe Gates of Slumber or some of those kind of bands, I guess, but...
I'm sure a lot of the, like, Finnish... I mean, they're weird because they're not... really a doom band. They're kind of their own thing, but then you get a lot of across the board people like I guess more a lot on the doom end. Sure. Maybe it's for the guitar tone or the atmosphere.
Yeah,
but I don't hear a lot about them, to be honest.
No, but I
know like Lee Dorian, Gary Jennings. I've heard talk about them before. Greg McIntosh mentioned their guitar tone.
That. Yeah, the guitar
stuff
tone
before
for sure, from Paradise Lost.
But yeah, I mean, it's really, they're always talked about with esteem and regard, but not specifically that much. More from journalists, I think, than I hear from people saying like, oh, they're a huge influence on us or whatever.
Yeah. The next kind of set of songs has a couple interesting things about it. The first tune, Death of the Sun, we're going to hear, it was originally written in 1977, and then it was put out on the Metal Massacre. Mm-hmm. The very first one, in fact, which Metallica didn't make it until Metal Massacre 3? Was that the one that, or were they in the very first Metal Massacre?
Their name's spelled wrong on one of them, whichever one it is.
I remember that.
It's missing a T.
Yeah.
I have the first one.
Yeah.
I don't think Metallica's on the first one.
I don't think they are. I feel like they're on the third one. I want to say that's kind of what makes that number sticks out to me, but I should have really looked into that. But this is a re-recorded version of that song, and a lot of people kind of like the rawness of the original a little bit better. I don't have the original like offhand to sort of compare it to.
Sure.
But it still sort of fits with kind of the record. And then you kind of get, the other sort of big epic song. Actually, there's three really big epic songs: Master, King of the Dead, and then Finger of Scorn. And this is a song where Greg Lindstrom, the guy that you were talking about before, who used to be in the band, actually wrote it, gave it to the band, and said,
sure,
run with it.
Yeah, go for it.
Do it. And it was actually, I think, written like in the Frost and Fire sort of era, so it's kind of an older song too. And it, King Foley says that singer Tim Baker was always loathed by many critics for his overly raw vocal delivery, but without Tim's evil delivery, tracks like Finger of the Scorn just wouldn't have worked. While the band sets the mood, Tim sets the intensity while pulling out and grabbing from within his soul meaningful words like "the beast will rule the hearts of man till mankind falls to rape again." A quite haunting yet beautifully faint guitar passage opens up Finger and finds reprisal later on in the song, almost serving as a quiet time for the listener to deeply think about just what Tim is saying. Disturbing material for sure. So, there's a reason King's a professional. He kind of captures some of the stuff that we're kind of trying to say.
Well, I'm pretty sure this is like a record he grew up with too. So this, that's the kind of stuff I could say about Left Hand Path or something. But
it's got a lot of meaning for him.
He really sums up all these songs exactly how what I'm feeling out of them as well.
Sure.
It's great.
And so Finger of the Scorn, it kind of has, and Mark pointed this out. The opening, the sort of instrumental kind of opening,
the 12-string guitar thing.
Yeah, it reminded you of some Metallica stuff.
What was it? To Live is to Die? To
Live is to Die from Injustice is the one that jumps out to me that it could be.
Yeah.
Which is kind of, it's almost like they're called Cthulhu or they're Orion for Injustice for All, even though it has a little bit of vocals kind of like near the end.
But barely, yeah.
I think it's a song To Live is to Die. I think it's a song in honor of Cliff. I think it's the song they wrote. Yeah, okay. I want to say,
Yeah, which, it's so close. Mm-hmm. But, it's probably just like a classical guitar chording progression that, a lot of people were doing at this time.
And this one in particular, when you'll hear very much like a Steve Harris kind of bass beat, but it's almost like kind of slowed down and it kind of like moves.
It's like something off Killers of the first record, where he was a little more. He wasn't as gallopy all the time.
Yep, it's very kind of deliberative. It's what I would call kind of like progressive doom. It's got like this Maiden like kind of thing going on to it, and especially the solo in Finger of Scorn is very Maiden-esque.
Oh yeah,
Jerry Fogel really sort of like kills it in this one. And then we're going to end this set with a song called Toccata in D minor, and we'll talk a little bit more about that when we come back. Not a lot to say about it, but it does sort of fit into an interesting genre that was sort of starting to bubble to this time. So,
JSB representing on this one.
Yeah, there you go, Mr. Bach himself. So enjoy Depth of the Sun, Finger of Scorn, and Toccata in D minor.
Change away, but wait and see.
That was Toccata in D minor, Finger of Scorn, and Death of the Sun. And one thing kind of about Death of the Sun we kind of forgot to mention is it sort of opens, and you could tell it's an older song because it has like a much more like 70s rock kind of opening riff.
Some hard rock.
I think you kind of mentioned like Scorpions. I sort of said like old Aerosmith, kind of like sleaze rock kind of thing. So that's pretty cool. So again, it fits in with the flow of the record, but you can tell it doesn't have maybe the darkness that the rest of the record sort of has. And you could also say the same thing for the last song we heard, which is Mr. Johann Sebastian Bach himself.
Well, and this is the same year that Rising Force from Yngwie Malmsteen came out. I mean, that was kind of a... It's later on years, like especially a lot of the Sam Dunn, banger TV stuff has linked, how classical music is basically metal is modern classical music to some extent, to be that bombastic and oversized instruments, all that, but to literally do it, it shows the proficiency of these guys as musicians, but it's incredibly raw still.
Sure.
Which you don't really equate with, it should be very spit and polished and refined. But this is like if Bach was writing on guitar now, this is probably what it would sound like.
And Bach is such like an interesting guy because at the time, and there's like a metaphorical sort of element to Bach with like a band like Cirith Ungol, because Bach was sort of, he was doing Baroque, but he was at the very, very end of the Baroque period where like this new more, I guess you would call it like romantic, which is what like Beethoven's part of like the Romanticism sort of movement was sort of starting to come about. So Bach wasn't very popular. He kind of seemed like an old fuddy-duddy that was like holding on to these old traditions, and yet Bach wasn't really appreciated until like years and years
kind of
later,
like Cirith Ungol.
which is exactly like a band like a Cirith Ungol. And I was commenting to Mark, the only critique like you could maybe lob at a record like this, if you of course could get into Tim Baker's vocals, but besides the vocal sort of stuff, is that all the songs kind of have kind of a sameness sort of quality. I mean, there's a lot of personality to all the songs for sure, but like you can tell it's a Cirith Ungol song from like pretty quick within it.
2 seconds in.
Yeah, it kind of has that sort of feel. And one of the things about the Baroque style was that it all kind of had these very like specific parameters that you sort of play in. And so a lot of people found Baroque music to be like too predictable or something. It's almost like garage rock. Like garage rock has limits to what you can do, but like you can do a lot of cool shit in garage rock with just tempo and like, I mean, I love, there's a lot of derivative quality like the Stooges, but who cares? Like that's what I love about it.
A lot of powers in the production too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so I think that, I'm not saying that's why they did Bach, but I could see like a band like them kind of being interested in Bach's style of classical music, because Baroque was much more kind of like repetitive and sort of driving and kind of.
I mean, that. in the mid '80s, well, it's 84. I was about 9 years old, I think, in '84.
I was 6, so.
But there was a huge classical resurgence, at least where I was at, in middle of Michigan. I remember like my mom would bring home classical stuff, and I like enjoyed it as a kid. Because it was like something new. It was powerful. It made me think of movies, soundtracks, and stuff like that. But I remember...
I always think of Bugs Bunny cartoons. That's where I like a lot of classical music and stuff.
Yeah, those things, besides just smashing the hell out of people with hammers, those cartoons had a lot to offer.
Sure, yeah.
But no, I think in general there was kind of a cultural, at least in my recollection of classical music, kind of like especially Wagner and stuff coming back into.
Yeah, so I think it's a cool little statement and one that kind of comes out of left field. But again, this is a band like the aforementioned Manila Road that's a very left of center kind of band. You know, they don't really fit into like any categories. And just when you think you've got them down, once you hear Finger of Scorn, all of a sudden here comes this Bach song. You're like, what? Come on, you know, like where did this come from? And it's a kind of a cool little thing to sort of throw in there.
You know, I want to say at the downtown library in Mount Pleasant used to have a very small, like, the records you could sign out.
I think so. Yeah,
I'm almost positive there was a Cirith Ungol CD in there at one point, just because I think the Lord of the Rings reference or something got it in there. But that was another reason why I didn't want to listen to it, because it's at the library. How cool could it be if it's at the library?
Yeah, that's funny. I mean, I remember I was remarking to I was telling Mark earlier that I remember this cover like in a cassette tape used at New Moon Records where Mark and I worked. And I remember being like, oh, it seems cool, but like I've never heard anybody talk about these guys. It's old, so it probably is like bad, like old metal, or like, I guess I always thought like it would be like Crocus or Grim Reaper or something like that, which those bands are like fine for what they are. You know, Crocus,
I guess they're,
you know, Scream of the Night's kind of a pretty good song for what it is.
But they're a rock band, really.
But yeah, it's not like, and so I just kind of avoided it, and I could have been rocking that out in my Ford Ranger with my cassette deck, you know, and stuff. But we're going to close things here with the eponymous Cirith Ungol. The sort of, you know, the name of the band ends the sort of record. And we already kind of talked about that it shows up in Two Towers from Tolkien here. Fowley says it's the album closer and band theme, Cirith Ungol, that really needs to be heard. Try to run, try to hide. If you don't, you'll surely die, says Tim. And yet again, we're off into the doom and the dirge. Good word, dirge. The song closes the album off really well with some some tight, odd time changes, wild vocal echoes played right where it's needed, and some damn fine playing. And Robert Garvin said Jerry's solo on Cirith Ungol was the best 30 seconds of our 22-year career, which is kind of a cool way of putting it, you know. And I would say, like, this really is the summation of the whole record. I mean, it sort of has every theme that you heard in, whether it's the faster songs like Atom Smasher or the more slower stuff like Finger of the Scorn, you know, things like that. There's a lot of, like, stop, start, rush kind of proggy stuff kind of going on at times in the song. And it's, you know, again, if you've made it thus far in the podcast and you enjoy what you're hearing, you're definitely going to dig this. It's a little bit longer in the 6+ minute sort of category. But, yeah, it's a good way to sort of end the album. And then if you get the record, it does have a bonus track, live song like Last Laugh or something like that.
Yeah, which take it or leave it, but...
But let us know what you thought of this or the Manila Road. You know, if you can see the kind of comparisons that we're trying to draw between the two bands, if you're able to sort of pick up on it, or, you know, just give us some general feedback. You can leave us messages on iTunes or shoot us an email at requiempodcast@gmail.com. We're really going to kind of down the road start to try and read some of these emails a little bit, or, you know, things like that, and just kind of try and, you know, get the fan community to be more invested in kind of some of the stuff that we're doing. Because we do get a lot of really awesome feedback.
It's hard to keep up and respond.
Yeah.
So if we could respond through the show, that would be way easier for all of us.
And I know, like, on Facebook, check us out, Mark and Jason on Facebook. I do respond when people kind of send us comments and things like that. You know, I try to, you know, when they make, like, suggestions of, like, shows and things like that. And hopefully here pretty soon we'll have a Patreon page up where people can kind of make donations, and perhaps even with a certain amount of donation to make some kind of, you know, show requests and things like that. Within reason. We talked about that in the Manila Road episode. But yeah, Twitter, where you can find us, Requiem Podcast on Twitter and stuff like that. Yeah, that's about it. Any other avenues of communication that they can find us?
That's, I mean, really the Facebook page will have links for everything there. But just as I did at the end of the, you know, we have to have some kind of something about the name of the band, some more trivia.
Okay.
Robert Garvin mentioned how it was difficult for people to even say Cirith Ungol, what it meant.
Oh, I love
and two of the most common ones were Sarah's Uncle and Sirius Uncool.
So enjoy some Sirius Uncool with the song called Cirith Ungol as we sort of end things tonight. Yeah, I like the Sarah's Uncle's pretty awesome. So hopefully you dug it. We kind of, you know, went for the more obscure here, but that's all right. We kind of go all over the map. So yeah, for Cirith Ungol, I'm Jason.
And I'm Mark.